we're back and we're live and direct. If you were on my last live, it's just been like 25 minutes, but now it's time to go live with Ellen Livingston. I've known Ellen for a really long time, since I believe the first Woodstock Fruit Festival. Hello. So I've known Ellen for a long time, kindred spirits through raw food and yoga and mindfulness, and also both doing retreats out at the Farm of Life in Costa Rica, one of my favorite places in the world to go. And we're going to be talking about her contribution into the Ultimate Raw Vegan Bundle. 40 contributions worth over $1,850 for just $50 until midnight on the 11th. You can grab that in both of our links in our bios. Once you've checked us out, you're going to want to go over to Ellen's page and give her a follow and grab the bundle. Check it out if you haven't already. She's just joined in here, so I'm going to give her a wave and invite her in. But she has an amazing contribution to the bundle. And biggest tips she's learned being in this raw food lifestyle for nearly 2 decades. So maybe it's actually over. We're going to have to ask her. It's been a little while since we've talked. So I'm really excited to get into this with her and to get into her contribution and share that all with you. It's a nice one. Hey, Ellen.
Hey, Chris, I did it. I got here.
There we go. Look at this pro technology.
Yay, I could do it.
Across the world.
I am so atypical technologically.
It's all good. I try my best to keep up, but I don't always, and my nose is forced into it enough that I keep pretty good.
Oh, I see you as an expert.
Well, somebody's an expert to somebody always, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks for supporting me getting here. So. Yeah,
of course, absolutely, and thank you for being a part and for asking also, and for your fabulous contribution. I was just mentioning, in your book, you talk about some of the 20 big things that you've learned over the years as a raw vegan. And I was saying it's near 2 decades, or is it over 2 decades you've been into raw food?
It is just this last March. It was 21 years.
Dang. Yeah, you're my elder.
So when I hit that 20-year mark, barely, I started thinking, 20 years, that's something. Maybe I should do something to celebrate. So, and then I got inspired to start writing. So.
Love it. Loving it. Absolutely. And I mean, I'm really excited for my 20-year anniversary. To me, 20 years is something that just jumps out. But I guess once you got to 20, then maybe you're thinking 25 is the next one, or
50.
Quarter century.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we must be almost 20 now, right? Almost at 20.
19. Next spring will be 20, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we were neck and neck there.
Yeah. So what's going on? Where are you at? If people here haven't met you before, you want to give us just a little bit of a rundown where you're at right now and just a bit of your journey.
Yeah. Well, I met Chris at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, and then he was my chef for several years in Costa Rica at the Farm of Life. So that's how we got to know each other way long time ago. Yeah. And since then, I was living in Michigan for many years and doing events and things there as well. And I, about 2.5 years ago, moved down to Southwest Florida. Yeah. As many of us. That's
a nice shift. That's a really nice shift.
Many long-term raw vegans end up migrating towards some kind of more tropical space. So this is the subtropics. It's pretty nice. It's about 84 degrees right now and sunny and very nice.
Makes it even easier for yoga, doesn't it?
Yep. And I'm growing some bananas and papayas and mangoes, and they haven't all produced yet, but they're little baby trees and they're on their way. And it's just kind of fun to be able to do that and know that someday I will literally be growing my own tropical fruit in my little yard. So absolutely.
A nice little fruit forest all surrounding your yurt.
Yeah, I don't have a yurt anymore. That was I had a giant yurt in Michigan where we did events, and it was very sad to leave that, but it was in the wrong climate, and yurts don't do so well in the humidity of the subtropics. So. Oh no,
I guess, they get moldy. Hey?
Yep, so now I have a little concrete block house, and I have little mini retreats here. I have a couple extra bedrooms with their own bathroom, and we share the common kitchen, and I let my clients come down and just work with me a little more closely right in my space. So that's one of the things I do here. And otherwise, I selected a little small town that I had gotten to know where I hardly ever get in my car. And so I have this very barefoot bicycle riding lifestyle where, I mean, we had a big hurricane and my car got smashed and it was in the shop for about 3 weeks and I didn't even notice that it was gone. That's how I
You
realized.
did.
I didn't really
You
use
hippie,
much.
you Ellen, you hippie to the hippie to the soles of your feet.
Definitely. And I love being, I rarely wear shoes here except when I have to go somewhere because it's just so nice to, I still pinch myself. Do I really live here where I can wake up in the morning virtually every single day and step outside into the sunshine and it's warm? And, you know, if it gets cold for 2 days, we're all complaining and shivering. And 2 days
And
later,
cold's
it's
like,
hot again.
and cold is probably like 15 degrees or something like that, or I guess like 80s or something.
I do Fahrenheit. I mean, in the winter time, we do still have a Florida winter. And so I feel badly when my Michigan friends who are desperately trying to escape the cold come down here in January thinking it's going to be beach weather. And it's not always. It can be in the 60s or 50s.
Yeah.
But it still feels great to them. So it was hard. I left community. I left family. I left my kids up there, some of them. I now have a grandbaby for the first time and he's up in Michigan. And so I'm going to be, you know, a little bit traveling back and forth. But I sort of had to like just, my kids were very supportive because they'd watched their mom for 2 decades long for the sun and the warmth and the fruit, and they got it. It was, you know, it was not at all surprising to them. So I had
time for you to leave the roost, right? And make your dream come true and you know, go back home, right? Follow home. Was that your inspiration for your new book?
Following Nature Home is the title of my new book. And that came out of just, you know, probably the most pervasive spiritual kind of lesson of this whole fruitarian odyssey of mine has been peeling back layer upon layer upon layer of what it means to open up ourselves to listening to real wisdom. That, you know, where does it come from? How do we hear it? It's so confusing. There's so many messages. There's so much pressure to live a certain way. And it takes a lot of courage to kind of go against that grain or step out and follow what feels truer to some of us. And, you know, my temple has always, I realized it took me a little while to go deeper with it, has always been nature. And, you know, whenever, even as a younger person, whenever I was deeply tormented or confused or upset, if I would just step outside under the big sky or get my shoes off or lie on the grass, that would be the fastest ticket back to some sort of relative balance and grounded feeling. And so, you know, it is only natural when you start to tap into the magic of fruit that you want to be closer to the environment where it grows and the sunshine that's on it. And the more unnatural it felt to be sitting in my living room eating a watermelon looking out at the snow.
It is a little bit different.
It can be done. I did it for many years.
It can be done. And you know, it's funny, like I can honestly genuinely say I don't really feel too much of a contrast from being, you know, in Sweden or Canada to the tropics.
Right.
Excepting over the months, I notice my vitality goes a little bit down over the winter, then it peaks back up. Like it's a little bit more like this rather than a little bit more stable, you know, but
yeah. I mean, you can learn
I like
the
to
tricks.
Be outside.
You learn
you got to learn the tricks.
I got a hot tub and a wood stove and I wore long underwear and I learned how not to let the cold get under my skin. And, you know, I didn't eat, I traded watermelons for dates in the winter and things like that.
Yeah.
So this is not a necessity, but it sure is nice. And
oh, heck yeah.
And following nature home also means to me following our inner nature.
Yeah.
So I wrote a lot of chapters about that and just knowing thyself. Mm-hmm. And how do you go about that, and how do you hear that softer whispering from deep inside that, you know, we don't hear until we're still enough. And trusting enough. And I don't think we're brought up to really trust the inner voice. And, you know, we're brought up to really to look to authority and to the experts for the answers about our health and what we should do in life and all kinds of things. And so it's really a deep on, you know, peeling back for people to trust that and hear it and know that it's okay to follow it. And no matter what other people might think of you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's as some say, a warrior's path, or just like going against the grain, you know, and but it's so worth it. And it's amazing how many people just completely set aside their intuition, you know, set aside what actually feels natural and makes sense, and just does things that are so far from any streamlined connection, you know, to higher self or to nature,
Even
because an
knowing
expert
we're
says
doing
so.
that, even when we know we're doing that, it's like we
Yeah, yeah,
feel there's a
yeah.
big fear of standing out or being perceived as not wanting to fit in. Or it's not that I don't want to fit in. I'd love to fit in, but I also need to fit into my skin first. And
There we go.
you know, and more
Absolutely.
powerful than that, I started noticing a kind of symbiotic relationship with fruit that I really believe we're meant to have. And when we go against that, I mean, literally, we need each other. It's a cyclical.
Yeah.
And there's no other food I challenge people. I mean, come up with any other food on the planet that we could share that kind of relationship with. It doesn't exist. And so
Yeah.
that was a strong realization to me.
Absolutely.
Um,
Have you found, with all of this stuff, have you found in your own life as well as in your coaching clients, have you found that the raw food diet really gets you into that place of more self-discovery, you know, a deeper connection to spirit? Have you found that to be a pretty universal thing?
yep. For anyone who's willing to stick it out for a while. I also have found that it doesn't necessarily much matter what angle people come into deepening their awareness from. In other words, it doesn't have to be through diet. It could be through
Yeah.
yoga. It could be through nature. It could be through a relationship that wakes them up. But either way, you either start moving deeper by eating the foods nature gave us, and that
Yeah.
helps it open up, or by raising your frequency through some other means, you start to resonate with the idea of eating more fruit and raw foods. So
Yeah.
either way, it's all about frequency is what I've learned, and energetics. And you know, even with emotions, I get a lot of clients who are feeling very challenged, as I have been in life, moving through our emotions. And I think what really happens, and I write about this in my book, is that we tell stories about what we're feeling, and then we traumatize ourselves. And if we could
Yeah.
just recognize that it's just energy moving through us, and we could just kind of step back and watch the show in a way, kind of like what Doug Graham told me when I fasted with him, and he said, okay, everybody, write down all the things you want healed when you go on your water fast.
Yeah.
So we all wrote down all these things we wanted to have magically gone in our bodies. And he said, now crumple it up and throw it away, because your body knows what it's doing and it's got a different agenda. Right? And then he said, and just sit back and watch the show. And we don't
Yeah.
have to be stressed out about it. We're just going to watch the show, and it's going to be interesting. And every day it's going to be a little different. And
Yeah.
so I think our emotional lives are like that every day, even every minute. It's a little different. And if we cannot get all attached to it, and we can just kind of watch it and honor it and recognize that it's just energy, then it's not as traumatic. Then I can just be with it. And as soon as I tell myself, same thing with physical pain. I've had a lot of experience with chronic physical pain over the course of my life. And it's only traumatic when I tell a story that makes it traumatic. Like, oh my God, this pain is going to wreck my body. I'm broken. It's never going to go away. I'm never going to walk right again, or something like that. Then I'm traumatized. But if I just go, oh, today my leg hurts at about a level of 7, right in the middle of my thigh. Let me just take a deep breath and send it some relaxing energy, and I'm just not going to worry about it. And I'm going to do what I can today. Then it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
Right?
don't think that inner peace really requires perfect health. I think it's a nice thing to shoot for, health.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have to say, oh, I can't be at peace until my body's perfect.
No. I definitely resonate with that 110%. And I mean, the surest path to peace is deciding right now, you know, rather than trying to think in the future.
Certainly you've been on the warrior path in your own body. I know from watching your escapades, you know, so I know we've had conversations about this in the past, because it's our journey to get through it through the body. And, you know, I got into yoga because I was into being in my body, and yoga allowed me to access my inner being and my spiritual self through my body, because I was comfortable in my body, and that gave me like a safe zone to explore something else. And so I think that's
How did you get into yoga? And was that was before raw food?
Oh yeah, way before.
Yeah.
That was about, well, I fell on a skiing slope in Aspen, Colorado and shredded my left knee to pieces. And that sent me into a year and a half of intensive physical therapy. And I was graduating high school. So I graduated on crutches with a big cast and yeah. And then went off to college kind of like that, just after that. And so it was a humongous set of events and transition that happened very quickly. And that's when I got into yoga. I somehow discovered yoga and I was about 19 and it was like a lifeline. It was,
Yeah.
you know,
I was the same age I discovered yoga.
Really?
Yeah, 99, but a little bit different years, but similar.
So we were yogis first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized that I'd been kind of spiritually seeking. I didn't know what it was, but you know, since I was much younger, like maybe 13.
Yeah.
And it just sort of, and then really how I got into raw was through health problems because I had some from physical with my back and my knee and all of that. But then eventually I also had digestive problems that were pretty severe. And I went to doctors and they said, oh, it has nothing to do with what you eat. Mm-hmm. And I was like 24 at that time. And I thought, well, that's weird. Like, I don't think that really makes sense. And so and they weren't offering me anything but medication and wait and see and maybe surgeries. And so I just kind of divorced myself from that and started reading everything I could get my hands on about nutrition and how the digestive system works. And I just got I'm not really a scientist kind of person, but I was fascinated to figure out how my body's supposed to work and why it wasn't. And food was definitely central. So
yeah. I can resonate with that too. And my timeline is somewhat similar. Am I mistaken, or was one of your first books also Fit for Life?
Yeah, that was one of my very first books. A chiropractor gave it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it had a chapter on natural hygiene.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was my first real big book that I read. It would have been 99 as well. I read that in 99 and started eating fruit for breakfast since then. And I think I've had like maybe a handful of cooked breakfasts since 99 after reading that book. Led me into raw food.
We have such parallel paths. The chiropractor led me there, and then I was eating a huge salad because I was living in an intentional community and co-housing community, and I didn't like the meals they were serving. So I was already exploring vegetarian and vegan, and so I'd bring this big salad, and somebody was watching me, and one day he gave me a book. It was actually David Wolfe's Sun Food Diet Success System. So
that was the second book I read.
Book.
Yeah.
Remember the triangle? He had like the triangle of fats, carbs, and proteins or something. And he had a different ratio than I do now by far, but
it didn't say like if that was in terms, at least from my memory, it didn't really say if that was in terms of weight or calories. It was just like triangle. Right. And I was so confused. I didn't know. I tried to go raw from that, and then I read Nature's First Law and cooked food is poison. And I was trying to go raw, but I couldn't figure it out. And then I met Doug Graham, and he like cleared it up.
That's kind of what happened to me, although I read I stayed up all night reading the Sun Food Diet book, and there was a phone number in the back of the book, and I just called it the next morning. Like I got barely any sleep. I was so excited I called, because it was like I'd been studying nutrition for 20 years, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, how come I didn't see this? Bing. Like, bing. Yeah. So I called this number, and somebody answered who wasn't David Wolfe, and they assigned me a coach named Chris something or other. And I had phone coaching from California, and he put me on this juice kind of thing, and I was raw from that day forward, never looked back. But it took me another year and a half until I met Doug and Rozzy. They came to a house close to where I lived, and I went to see them, and I went back the next day, drove another 3 hours back down there to meet with Rozzy for a 3-hour consultation.
Oh.
And
she's such a sweet
because
soul.
I was kind of wasting away. I felt good, but I was really emaciated living on vegetables. And she said, you're only getting about 900 calories a day. Let's do something about this. So she showed me how to eat fruit, and everything started to click into place at that point.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? That we're so far off course that we have to learn how to eat fruit.
Yeah.
And it's true though. I mean, bless it, because obviously for both of us that's been a big part of our career path, teaching others how to eat fruit.
Yeah, so silly. It's kind of silly really, but because everybody loves fruit, they just forgot that they love fruit.
Yeah.
you know,
see kids eating fruit and ruining their dinner by eating too much fruit and then thinking that's just a bad thing. You just ruined your dinner. You can't be eating that candy fruit all the time.
I think these old-fashioned values are the new leading edge.
Yeah, yeah.
People are coming back to it and recognizing what was always obvious to people a long time ago, and it just became not obvious to us anymore. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had dreams about it. Like, I couldn't believe that it took me that long to see it.
Yeah. You know,
I was
it
reading
actually,
all these books and I was studying, and it still took me 20 years to see it.
it makes me wonder, Ellen, like really thinking about it, like if people in general, like, I mean, generalizations are there for a reason, right? Obviously, there's going to be people outside of that. But it really makes me wonder if there was a really decent period of time where people were just pretty numbed out and oblivious, like, and just in the, like in the 19th century, because, I mean, even just not that far ago, people driving in cars without seat belts and, drinking and driving wasn't illegal and people didn't think about it. It's like
Right.
people just didn't think as much, or maybe I'm totally out to lunch, like, but it just strikes me as odd, very simple truths, very simple things that we would see and go, of course that's not safe, or of course, that is healthful, that we're just not necessarily recognized.
Well, I think sometimes we have to tip over first. Like, let's say cars were invented, there was no seat belts, but then a bunch of people started dying in car accidents. So they started to
Yeah.
think, oh, maybe it's not so safe. And then with the food, I think, clearly people have been tipping over in their health big time these days. And it's
Huge.
getting worse and worse and worse. And the worse it gets, and the more drugs that are prescribed, and the more tired people get of the side effects, the more they start looking for something else, and the more possible it is that they'll start to think about it again. I didn't really think about what I ate until I had a health crisis. I just
No, that's
ate
true.
food what was served to me, and I didn't think about it.
That's true. And I guess also, I mean, even like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the last 100 years, people wouldn't have been eating as much processed, crazy food. So, I mean, the epidemic of obesity and cancers and stuff have just gotten worse and worse and worse because of the, leaving away from more whole foods and stuff like that. And, I think it's a poignant point you just kind of made there too about the value and the contrast, like seeing both sides of it, like not knowing and all of a sudden experiencing the pain side of anything. How has that been a role in your journey and your evolution with raw food and just with yoga?
Seeing that, well, in my journey with pain in my body has been pretty instructive all along the way. It has not been fun, that part of it for me, but I've learned so much from it. Like, let me give you an example where I learned what Feldenkrais was. I never would have heard of that modality, except that I had my hip lock up on me and it just wasn't working. It had something to do with this knee that had just been like, the ligaments got overstretched when I was dancing too much. Okay. And it's a very, very loose knee. It doesn't have arthritis. It just has super loose ligaments. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot I can do about it except keep it strong around it. And so every now and then I overdo the sideways movements and it gets stretched out and it gets inflamed. And usually it recovers in a few days. But this time it went into something where a whole bunch of other muscles in my body got involved and they all decided to like clamp down. Yes. And for 9 months, my leg did not function right. I had to lift it into the car. I could barely walk. It got really traumatic. And I was going to chiropractors and massage therapists and all these things, and it wasn't really working. And then I went to this Feldenkrais class and I was told, and I started learning it online too, I was told that I needed to go into these micro tedious moments with my hip. Like, these exercises were so tedious for me and I was so frustrated and I was so rebelling. I hate this. I was so impatient. And after a little bit of that, I finally just surrendered and decided to take it seriously. And I dropped down deep into my hip and I got really quiet and I studied these tiny little movements that I never would have bothered to pay attention to before. And I got to know my hip at another level. And I had all this like compassion for my hip and my leg and all this love started
just doing its best for you, Ellen. It's just doing its best for you.
I just stopped fighting it. And I started just accepting and started letting myself go deeper into these more subtle body things. And that helps me to this day to like not resist and not just stay with this macro frustration, but be willing to like see it as, okay, it's a dashboard light going off. I need to actually pay attention. I need to slow down. I need to go in. I need to take a break. I need to listen to it. I need to do a different set of exercises. I need to abandon yoga sometimes. I just did that recently for quite a while because those movements weren't working for me anymore at the time. And I needed to study other things. I needed to just like listen to my own inner guidance about how my body did and didn't want to move right now for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't always understand what it's doing, but I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about how my mind is involved and how I carry tension in my body. No matter how good my food is,
Yeah.
I can still create tension in my body from old ingrained habits of how I carry energy. And so I've had to study all these other things. You know, it's not just about the food, but I'm pretty certain that if I didn't eat this really nice non-inflammatory diet, I could have much more debilitating kinds of, you know, muscle problems and inflammation given, you know, so it's all kind of like works together. And what I try to do is when I get into any kind of trouble now, I try to find the inspiration in it. Yeah. How could I get myself inspired to move through this rather than angry that it's happening and it's inconvenient? What's inspiring about this? Like, how could I grow and like master another layer of knowing myself, or of, you know, being able to work with my mind or my emotions? How could I just, you know, live inside of myself a little bit more skillfully and get inspired about that? So, you know, it's not just eat the right food and everything works great. Whoever you are, you come to the raw diet, you still bring that person, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. A lot of people, they just really do think. I remember when I first went raw, I genuinely thought if I could just do raw food perfect, the rest of my life would be perfect, you know? And if I, oh gosh, it'd be so much easier. And I remember I deviated from raw food, and because I had that on such a pedestal, I was knocked off that pedestal, and I didn't like myself. Like I actually hated myself because I wasn't able to stick to perfect, because that meant I was a failure and couldn't do all the things I wanted to do, couldn't succeed, wasn't even worthy of it, you know? And couldn't be further from the truth, huh?
And that the personality that tends toward perfectionism, or in anything, or another thing I learned called goodism. Those of us like me, we always want to like be good and be good to people and help people and be nice, and all of that can become problematic because it makes us tend to carry tension, because deep down there's a little bit of, maybe should I say, rage about having to be so perfect or so good. And so we may not even be aware that we're carrying that energy. As on the surface, it looks so fine, but down deep, we wish we didn't have to be that way. And so learning how to, you know, be good with and celebrate our messiness, our imperfection, to just chill out, relax, and kind of like be more in a flow of, you know, allowing the energy to flow in a way that actually feels good to live with. And so you know, I'm all about like, I will not let myself do a whole lot of stress anymore. Which is one reason I'm not on Instagram and Facebook all the time, because I find that to be, you know, a little stressful to keep up with. And so I've just had to like ask myself what works for me, really. Like, where do I like to be? It's different for everybody, rather than thinking I'm, you know, so lousy because I don't do all the technology or whatever, or that I'm not good enough, or I'm just choosing a different path, and that's good for me. So finding out where you roll best and do more of that, you know, finding out what comes naturally for you. For example, I like to show up for talks and interviews. I like to go give a talk physically out on a stage with people in the audience. So I do that around town here. I'm not really a behind the scenes internet person as easily. You know, if I have my new book, the way I'll probably go market it is I'll probably go give talks around town and meet people word of mouth. And, you know, I may not sell as many, but that's okay with me because I'm being me.
Yeah.
And so, you know, people will ask, you know, how should I market my book, or how should I sell my product? And I'd be like, well, what do you like to do? Where do you like to be? What spaces do you feel good in?
Yeah.
And go do that, because then you'll shine and you'll be your most sincere and you'll be the most relaxed and you'll be the most effective, really, for you.
What if that is just when you're in the bathtub?
How do you mean that?
I'm just being a silly man.
Well, sometimes I'd rather just be in the bathtub, and
yeah, me too.
I do try to go slow. That's one of the things I think for so many people, and certainly it was very true for me, because like we were talking about those extremes where you don't see something until you tip over with an injury or an illness or right? I got overwhelmed and I burnt myself right out. Like I kind of just ran out of steam and passion for what I was, you know, because I was just taking on too much for too long, over a long period of time. And now for myself and a lot of people, I advocate opening up space. So
absolutely.
When we eat the raw diet, we open up space in our cells and in our body. When we do yoga, we open up space in our heart, our mind, our body. And when we look at our calendar, we can open up space in every day to, you know, do a little less and be more present. And I find life to be more meaningful that way. It's more beautiful. I have time for people. It makes me smile. I go to the beach. You know, we all have to make a living somehow, most of us, but we can still find space if we commit to that. Right. And I'm really, that's me now. And it's not just because I'm almost 60 years old. I think, well, maybe it is. I'm not talking about like the idea of retirement. I'm talking about just a sustainable daily life.
Sounds like wisdom to me.
That's fun.
Just real, like, actual wisdom and growing in knowing of self and what it requires to feel that balance and that connection and that vitality that you really know you can be living and vibrating at, right?
I find I have more readily shareable wisdom when I am going slower, more spacious. Like I download it better.
You know, it's funny too, like, relating that to food and just mood and the whole life. It's like we were talking earlier about how there are messages that our body kind of gives us and signals and intuitions, and how far off base a lot of people are not listening to that. And you know, the more we are not listening to that, the louder and louder sometimes those knocks get, you know, until we have a health crisis or we have something else happen. And it's amazing how clear it is, because whether it's food and you're eating poor foods and, you know, you get stomach issues and then, like, you know, mental issues and then body aches and pains, or whether it's, you know, your calling and your pace of life, you know, life has a way of telling you, right? Of trying to tell you. And sometimes we hear it, sometimes we don't. I've been
my injuries happen when I'm kind of like not really fully present.
Yeah.
Usually when it happens and I just don't pay attention. And, you know, I notice when I'm barefoot, the only time I tend to injure my feet when I'm barefoot is when I'm in a house.
Kicking something with your pinky toe?
Yeah, because I'm kicking furniture legs and unnatural things, and maybe I'm not as present when I'm rushing around a house as I am as soon as I step outside onto the real ground. I don't know if you find this, but barefoot on the real ground, I'm paying attention.
Oh, yeah. It's a presence practice, 100%.
Because it's prickly, and there could be a bee on the ground or a pine cone or a stick or a rock or I'm paying attention. It's not like a floor where you just forget because it's all the same, and then you hit a table leg and break your toe. I've done that several times. Yeah. But I don't injure my feet outside, knock on wood. So I think that's when I'm barefoot, you know, because I'm paying attention. I think it's really all about paying attention. I have a chapter in my new book that comes off of a Woodstock Fruit Festival talk that I gave many times, called Decoding True Hunger. Yeah. And I love that topic. The idea that, we're hungry for things other than food. And, for, you know, we also don't understand what our actual food hunger is all about and how to how to understand that. So that's one thing. But a lot of it, you know, it's emotional and spiritual hunger that we don't know what to do with. We don't even understand that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so we keep
Just
knocking.
fill in a hole, right? Fill in a void and trying to escape, trying to, yeah.
We don't want to feel whatever it is, and we don't even realize we're doing that. But if we stop and look at it, what I found out is feeling the feelings honestly isn't generally as bad as some part of me predicted it was going to be, right? It's our
totally
imagination true. That's the traumatic thing, but the actual experiencing of the emotion is not so bad, or the physical pain is not as bad as the imagination would make it out to be. So the real monster to reckon with is the mind, not the emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can only count less than one hand of the experiences in my life that the moment was harder than the thought of the moment, you know, but like so often we build it up and create anxiety and fear and resistance around it, and and then all of a sudden you're in it, it's like, okay, here I am, this is a little tough, but it's not the end of the world.
And we're so creative. I mean, we can come up with such convincing stories in our mind that we literally convince ourselves of something that isn't even true, probably won't even happen. But we make it sound so convincing, especially those of us who have a colorful imagination. I can tell a good story in my head and I start to believe it. And then what's true now for me that wasn't true 20 years ago and 30 years ago is that I've looked at this and studied this phenomenon long enough that I now catch it really fast.
You see it coming.
The habit's still there sometimes, but I see it. I see it coming. I see it happen, and then I nip it in the bud in a way that I couldn't do before, and I turn it around. And I take responsibility now for my, shall I say, like my frequency. You know, whether I'm grounded or not, whether I'm grumpy or not, I take responsibility for that now. I know better. Even though it can be tempting, I know it doesn't work and it's not true to blame it on something outside of myself, that it's up to me. And I know the tools now to raise my vibration. If it dips, you know, I know it's up to me to look at that and decide whether I want to stay there or whether I want to bring it up to something more loving, more beautiful, more fun to live in. Right. And
sounds to me like you're a conscious creator.
Yeah. And that takes learning, and it takes skill, and it takes experience of having stumbled and fallen enough times and being committed to getting back up and rising strong and developing the muscle to want that, you know, and because I used to, you know, like you, I have some real experience with depression in my former life. And I know that path, and I don't want that anymore. And I don't have to have that anymore because I know how not to have that. So but it used to just kind of happen, and before I knew it,
so when you're talking, so when you're talking about one, depression and you know, finding your way out of that, and two, I'm running on fumes, I haven't had dinner yet. We'll start there. When you're talking about, you know, somebody who's in that space and they can't see a light, you know, what would be your kind of experience, your advice on trying to find your way out of that?
Well, I have some examples that worked really well for me, and I just didn't know it at the time. But if I could talk to my younger self now, with the wisdom I have now, I would say, get outside. Take off your shoes. I mean, get outside. I don't care what the weather is. Try to make it work. But you know, look at the sky, because that automatically for me takes me into like a bigger perspective, right? Because it helps me get out of my head. Remember that I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my feelings, and just feel my, and just try to be okay with whatever's going on, but just be outside and just give it to the earth. I had an experience in Costa Rica once. This wasn't about depression, but I had kind of like a mutiny on one of my retreats. This is kind of funny. I had taken them on an adventure.
I know this one.
But you know this story, or you know?
Yeah, but they don't.
I had taken a group to up the Diamante Falls to sleep in the cave. And this
Yeah.
was a second week of retreat. And we had plenty of food up there, brought in on horseback, you know, and there was plenty of food for everybody, but the avocados ran out. So the avocado dressing at the dinner ran out. So a couple of people, I didn't even realize this had happened, but a couple of people didn't get their fatty dressing.
Yeah.
But there was like 10 papayas left over. So we had a ton of food, right?
That's
and
not
nobody
food.
needed to go hungry.
Yeah, no.
My sister was on that retreat, and the next morning she said to me, Ellen, I think you need to have a group meeting before we go down the mountain this morning, because people are saying some stuff that you're not aware of right now behind your back. And I was like, oh, really? Oh, gosh. She said, trust me, you just need to get everybody in a circle and talk it out.
Yeah.
So do you know that table at the Diamante Falls Caves, that big stone table with all the stone benches around it? So we had our whole group sitting around this big table. Like, it was so cool. And we got a waterfall on one side of us and a cave on the other side. And we're way halfway up this huge mountain. And we're just really in the wilderness. And
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
You got your staff and
It kind of felt that way, because I said it's come to my attention that you know, maybe there's some feelings that want to be shared before we move forward today. And you know, and slowly but surely some stuff started coming out. And it was mostly the youngest people in the group. They were in their 20s, and so not a lot of experience. And one of them, very tiny girl, very slim, and she was showing us with her arm that we were starving her. That in these 15 hours or something, she had lost weight because she didn't get her avocados. And like, you realize the emotions people have attached to food, right?
Yeah,
and they
huge.
couldn't believe. And so somebody in the group, very high drama, rushed over into the cave and rifled through their bags and brought a box of dates out and put it in front of her. Like, here, there's food here. You're not starving, you know. But she was really upset. And somebody else brought up another thing that was related to food. And then someone else said, hey, you guys, like, I came on this retreat for this kind of experience, didn't you? Like, you're disappointing me. I wanted the natural hygiene experience. I wanted to, you know, have fruit mostly and hike to a cave and all this kind of stuff. And but anyway, everybody aired their stuff. And we came to this really magnanimous place where it felt really great and everybody was happy again, like that fast. It took about 15 minutes and all of a sudden everybody seemed really jolly again. And we started to go off to a swimming hole before we went down the mountain. And I realized as we stepped away from the table that my whole body was shaking.
Oh, wow.
And I realized
you took that on?
I am a highly sensitive person, nervous system wise. I score off the charts in that spectrum. And I had taken in all these feelings and people's rage and anger and whatever, and their fears about not having enough food. That's a primal thing and it's pretty strong. And I had taken that all on. And so I separated myself from the group for a minute at the next waterfall swimming hole, and I climbed up this humongous rock and I just lay on it on my back with my arms spread out, eagle, and I just lay by myself looking at the sky on that rock. And I visualized, you know, giving all that energy that wasn't mine. It was not mine. It was theirs. It was somebody else's energy. It wasn't mine, but I was holding it as the leader who was the target. And it's hard to be the target. And I just gave it to the earth, gave it to the rock, you know, with my understanding, whether it's true or not. I like to believe that the earth can just take it and hold it and absorb it and transmute it. So I just gave it to the earth. And within a few minutes, I was completely healed. And I just went and played with everybody in the waterfall and let it go. Nice. Now, if I hadn't done that, I could have held on to it. I could have told stories about it. I could have made up any old thing that would have made me not want to hang out with them anymore. Or so learning to like see that it's just energy, find a way to let it go, give it to the earth, give it to the sky, whatever, and get back to life. And don't make it ruin more and more and more of your precious time in this experience of life, because we only have so much time. And you know, if we spend a lot of it stuck in our brain with a bunch of ridiculous stories, we kind of ruin it.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how we can actually know that and still choose to ruin it. Like, we can be like, I know that I'm being a little bit of a brat here and I'm complaining, or I'm, you know, pushing this energy on somebody else, and yet still choose that, you know? Why
do you think we do that?
It's a good question, you know, but I think there can definitely be various different reasons why we might still do that. I think part of me believes that we're really here to experience everything, and you know, that we're experiencing that in order to feel that contrast and know the choice, you know, to really know that we do have a choice, and to recognize that we can choose whatever we want, because even though it doesn't feel right, we're still choosing it. And it's just like awareness, but on the other side of awareness of choosing what actually doesn't serve us.
I think we feel justified too in having our sad feelings or our angry feelings, and we don't want to let go of that being right about that. We're justified in feeling like this, and it's true, we might be justified in it, but then it boils down to, but do you want to stay stuck here? And if you do, okay, maybe there's something for you to process there and you need to spend more time there. But if you're tired of being stuck there, like I got tired of it, you know, because I've been there enough times, I was just like, I'm tired. I'm not actually getting what I want out of this. I'm tired of staying in this place. I'm going to go back and be playful again and let this go. And I also think we're afraid at some level of being a brighter soul.
Absolutely.
Like we're scared.
I think
We're scared to be that powerful or to be that bright, and you know, so we keep that like cloak on where it's a little more familiar to be kind of down or kind of like flat or kind of like not really in our power. We don't have to be responsible for showing up better, and we can just kind of comfort ourselves with comforting foods and zoning out on a program on the TV or whatever it is that we just want to numb out.
Yeah, I think people build identities around that as well sometimes, right? And like you said, just get comfortable and used to numbing out, just get into patterns and start to feel like, oh, maybe this is just how it is.
There's an emotional scale, and you know, I mean, I've seen research about this, and they kind of divide it in the middle, and there's all these so-called negative emotions that are the lower vibrations, you know, anger, frustration, bummed outness, sadness, grief, all of those. They're not bad and they're not wrong. They're just on the lower scale of frequency. And then there's the higher frequency of love and compassion and kindness and all of that. And as we, you know, work on ourselves and eat the foods that aren't blocking our energies, we do tend to rise and want to resonate in those higher frequencies, and it becomes a much more empowered and fun experience of life. And so the negative emotions, I see them now when they happen in my life, I see them as simply like indicators that I've strayed from my natural state, which I believe our natural state really is love and peace and that kind of thing. And so when I have an emotion that's not that, I think, oh, well, I've strayed, you know, what can I do to gently bring myself back to where I'm really designed to be? I think the negative emotions are just like, just little indicators. They're guideposts. They're not really where we're meant to stay.
No.
Yeah, we don't need identity.
No, I totally agree, 100%. I think so often people mistake signposts for identity and wrap themselves around it and think this is who I am, and it's just something moving through you.
Well, when people come to work with me and they're not on a raw diet or a high raw diet or a high fruit diet, you know, I don't require that of people who want to come and work with me. However, when I know that and I see them really stuck in a lot of negative emotional states and victim-y kind of places, I will definitely encourage them to move toward a high raw or fruit-based diet, because I know that they're fighting a losing battle trying to deal with all this while they've got all this density, like you said, in their body from the food. It's like it's an obstruction you don't need to put up with. So, you know, they're just making their emotional journey a lot harder, I think, by, you know, eating those foods. And so we can lighten the load physically, and that lightens our load mentally, emotionally, everything. It just kind of all starts to be an easier dance, and harder at the same time, because I will say, and I write about this in my book, the whole transition journey and what makes us resilient, because as we lighten up, we resonate differently than the people around us, and that becomes a difficult experience. Any longtime raw fruitarian kind of person has had this experience where you start to feel like you're on a different planet a little bit, walking through a twilight zone a little bit, because you're literally in a different like vibrational field than a lot of what's around you, and it starts to become, you know, just difficult and disheartening, and it can be depressing. And so that's where you have to like see that that's what's going on, and not blame the world around you, but realize what you're going to need in order to live at this level of this kind of different frequencies. You're going to need tribe, other people that get it. You're going to need to go to things like the Woodstock Fruit Festival or retreats, or, you know, get some raw friends you can talk to. You're going to need to forgive yourself when you don't fit in where you used to, and find new places that feel better, and just not sweat it too much, because, you know, you can't make other people do it with you, and you're just, so there's a sadness in that. There has been for me, of realizing how many people are not going to come with me. Yeah. And having to kind of let go of my expectation that that would happen. Yeah. My kids,
people that will go before us. And
I have three adult kids in their 20s, and none of them are vegan. Certainly none of them are raw. They know a lot. They're quite educated about it. They eat a lot of healthy food. They're all very athletic people, and they really care about their bodies, but they're not doing what I do, and I don't know if they ever will approach it. They are making other choices, and I have to, you know, let them do that and not fret my soul about it, because I've done my job with them in a sense. They're grown-ups now. They're going to do what they're going to do, and maybe, God forbid, it could happen that they have a health crisis that, like I did, and maybe that'll rock their boat and they'll make a different choice, and I don't know. But that's not,
at the very least,
it's not for me to
many
decide.
Seeds planted, right?
Many seeds planted. And so I try to comfort myself with that all we can do really is model what we're doing, and maybe share it if we're willing, and share it with a spirit of just with a happy spirit that we like what we're doing, and we like how we're living, and we're not deprived, and we're choosing it because it feels good, not because we should.
Absolutely. Wow, that's so key. I think that's like something that could be repeated. Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't have to do this. Nobody has to. People ask me, can you have coffee? And I'm like, sure, I can. I prefer not to, because it doesn't feel so good in my body. I can have whatever I want, but I'm choosing the things that feel good for me.
And not only that too, like you can have any of those things and it doesn't dampen your spirit, like in essence, right? Like I used to actually think that, like, if I wasn't as good a person if I didn't make that higher choice, right? Right. But it's like, no, that's just going to shift your experience, right? It's like, what do you want to experience?
What do you want?
And it goes back to,
what do you want out of life? Right.
Yeah. What do you want? What are you going to actively create? And the more you do one thing, that's going to be a bigger part of your actualization, right? Of your conscious or unconscious creation.
I had a start, like a really sort of challenging realization when I was about 12, that what I wanted was different than what it looked like my parents wanted for me, or even for them. That their idea of success was really, to my 12-year-old, 13-year-old mind, around achievement, outer achievement, and appearances and that kind of thing. And I just had this like private realization in my room one day that I wanted to feel happy and connected. Yeah. That would feel successful to me. And I began to get discouraged after that, because I was in school and I was just kept thinking, oh my God, is this what it is? Is this what I have to do forever? I have to jump through all these hoops to please everybody else, to study all this stuff I'm not even interested in, so that I can get A's, so that I can go to college, so that I can do what's expected of me in this family. And am I never going to get to just, you know, play with what would make me happy and connected? And like, they don't even understand what I mean when I try to say this to them. And so that was my journey of trying to unwind all of that. And it took me a long time to get off of the train of doing things to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. To be a good girl, to get my A's, to go to a good college, to get a good job. And, you know, I mean, for the last 30 years, I've worked for myself. I got off that train. I remember actually dropping out of a fancy elite college, came home, and my dad said, you should not have dropped out because you are getting off the track. And it was one of the few times I stood up to my dad and I said, whose track are we talking about? I slammed the door and walked out. So a lot of my life has been about finding my track and giving myself permission to live it.
Yeah. It's so funny, Ellen, the parallels on our path. It is really wild, you know, definitely kindred spirits. I've definitely had the same experiences, and I feel very, very blessed that at a very young age, I really connected with passion and purpose. And, you know, without going too deep into that, skateboarding, you know, I thought that was the only reason for living, and that led me into raw food. And then that sparked such a new passion that was my purpose. And I've always made it my mission to live through sharing the things that just lift me up, and abundantly giving and open armed receiving, and, you know, doing the best I can just to live a truly passion driven lifestyle, you know. And I remember, kind of like you, I think one of the very few times that I really had like a with my parents was along that kind of career path thing. And I was just like, listen, I'm going to make my choices, or you're not going to be here with me. Like, this is my life, you know. And
I'm going to be a pro skateboarder.
Well, that's what I thought for a long time. You know, I just went pro the other year, actually. Cool. Finally made it.
I was going to say, you can make a living. You can make a living doing just about anything that you're passionate about if you
just off what? Sorry?
Anything that you love, you can make a living with if you stay with it and become knowledgeable about it, right?
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Absolutely.
I just wrote a sentence the other day. I wrote something like, I make a living by living my life and sharing my discoveries and my wisdom along the way. And I also make money by living simply and spending less money. There are so many ways to make it work, you know, and so you can, you know, it's not about how many resources you have. It's about how resourceful you are.
I like that. That's one of those ones to write down. Yeah. That's like, can you say that again for all of us?
It's not about how many resources you have. It's about how resourceful you are.
Yeah.
And that's a lot about, I have a chapter called Raw Resilience, where I talk about what it means to be resilient, right? It's not just about having it come easily and having all the money you ever needed without lifting a finger or anything like that, or, you know, never having a health problem. It's how do you develop the resiliency to get
my cat food's going off. I'm sorry for the noise.
Your what?
I have an automatic cat feeder, and it's my so she.
That's funny. Telling them that it's the time to eat.
It's not me. It's the cat feeder, but it's just about done.
Yeah, it's about developing the resiliency to get through the hard times. I mean, weirdly, this is completely unrelated topic, but it's related. I was watching a documentary about these kids who are going through sexual transitions really young in life, like going through these operations and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, scary.
And what's going on. And they were saying that, and I was thinking about it, and I was realizing that, you know, going through childhood, like the middle years, the, you know, puberty and all that, it's uncomfortable. It's hard. It's weird. And we've developed this culture where we want things to be instantly better. We don't want to have to go through the messy parts and the hard times, because they might last for years. It might not be just a week of a hard time. It might be years. And we don't want to go through that in our culture. And so we go and get a pill or get a quick fix, or, you know, like, I don't like this body now, I feel uncomfortable, so I want a different one now. And instead of, I don't feel comfortable in my body, let me get some support around that and really, you know, be with it for a while and see what happens over time. Maybe I want a new body still. Maybe I actually begin to have new feelings about it, but it'd be okay to be uncomfortable for a while. There's a great book by Pema Chodron that someone gave me when I got a divorce. That was a very uncomfortable time. And it was called When Things Fall Apart. And one of the most profound little gems I got out of that was that, like, we don't want to be in the uncomfortable place. We want to reach right. We want to reach left. We want an answer. We want a solution right away. We want to get out of this hot seat where it feels uncomfortable. And that the most powerful thing we can do is learn to get comfortable in the discomfort. And just
1000%.
Life is uncomfortable, and changing your diet is really uncomfortable sometimes. And, you know, being different than your family and your friends is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And there's no quick fix to it. It's really all about finding the strength to be okay, to learn to be uncomfortable and not freak out.
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable, like with our feelings, with our physical pain, with whatever it is. It's learning to get it, that it's uncomfortable. Who said life was going to be comfortable or easy,
Yeah.
or
easy,
obvious,
or happy all the time, or
or that, I mean, when you think of, when I write about transition as well, just in general, a raw transition, a transition of any kind in life, and how you go through transition has a lot to do with how you think about it and what your expectations are. Do you go into a transition expecting it to be easy?
Yeah.
Or expecting it to be really hard? Do you expect it to be impossible? Do you expect that you'll be able to get through it? Do you expect it to be traumatic, or do you expect it to be interesting and inspiring and full of possibility? I mean, that's all the mental imagination. What are you? I like to
your
say,
mindset, right?
like to say, expect nothing, expect everything.
Yeah.
And just be open and be curious. And there's a resiliency in that. Like, I'll have faith that I'll meet what comes. I'll find a way. Sometimes I would think, what's the worst thing that could happen? What am I so scared about? What am I keeping myself awake at night? And I would kind of go through, well, what would be the worst thing? And then what? And then what would I do? And then what would I do? And I start to realize that it wouldn't be all that bad. I would figure my way through it. I'm smart. I'm resourceful.
Yeah.
I'm resilient. I can find a way to take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And, I'm not going to die. And even if I die, I'm not afraid of that. So
No.
That's the biggest fear. People are so afraid that somehow if they don't do the raw diet right, or they don't get enough nutrition, or this or that we don't say this out loud, but the primal fear is I could die.
Yeah.
Right. And you could possibly, but
it's usually not from here to there, like, one missed avocado meal.
I worked in hospice for a long time, and I sat at the bedside of lots of people who were actually dying. And and I think that probably helped me become a lot less afraid of it. It was, it's just another part of the whole path. And we hope we live a really long, fruitful life, and most of us get to, but to live always afraid of death is a little bit of a precarious, nerve-wracking way to live.
No life at all, as the old saying goes.
But, and then we don't take risks. We don't try on new things. And
I couldn't help but think too, when you're mentioning about, all the different topics of denial of self and rejection, and the shortcuts and the quick fixes. And it's like, they never are, right? None of those ever are. They end up getting louder and stinkier and worse down the line. It's like, which hard do you want? The moment, the hard in the moment, or the harder down the line,
Yeah, I decided that as hard as it might be to do all the practices to become healthy, I decided it was actually, and I know now, having been on both ends of the spectrum, I know that it's harder to be sick.
Way harder, yeah.
And so what have you got
Absolutely.
to lose? You might as well start taking steps toward getting healthier, because even though some of those do feel hard because you got to do new things that you're not used to doing, you might have to exercise a little more or a little differently, or, trade a few things in your lifestyle. But, the progress toward feeling better makes life easier, not harder. And then it becomes easier and easier to make the good choices, because they just are giving you such rewards that it's like a snowball gaining momentum. Becomes
its own motivation.
And I think you have experienced this. If you get off of the path that was making you healthy, to get back on, because it doesn't. You're like, oh yeah, that didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. Yeah. And I know better than.
There's potency in that contrast and experiencing it, right? Like the intellectual understanding is so different than the actual experience. And I think that that experience is sometimes what calls us off the path. It's just, oh, that's a reminder. This is actually really working, or this actually really doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, and we sometimes have to live it a few bazillion times.
Yeah, they're pretty slow.
I joke with people sometimes that, I learn how to help clients with various illnesses and injuries by experiencing them myself.
Yes.
That's why I had to get injured so many times and have so many problems, so that I would have this wealth of wisdom of having been through it myself.
Well, that's what they say, right? We teach what we need to learn the most, and the more we go through it, the better we can teach.
Yeah, and the more I've been through in my life, the more I've tried on and failed or succeeded or both, the more I've accumulated resilience and wisdom and a set of experiences. And I'm just happy that, if I died tomorrow, I'd be able to say I've lived. Like, I've tried on a lot of things. I've explored a lot of my dreams. Some of them worked really beautifully. Some of them fell flat on their faces. I had to do that, but I've learned to take risks, and I've loved taking risks. I've moved around a bit. I've tried on different ways of living. I've lived in a tiny little yurt with no running water and no electricity for a year. I've had built a big yurt on my land, not knowing what I was going to do with it. I just had this knowing that I wanted this structure and it needed to be here. And magical things happened from doing that, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just knew I had to have this thing happen, and it did. And then I left 10 years later, but those were some amazing 10 years. And then I was ready for a different chapter. And so I left everything and moved to Florida, and I don't know how long I'll be here. I remember once I was trying to get a business loan, and this organization wanted a 10-year business plan. And I sat down with a stack of paper I was supposed to fill out about all these details about my 10-year business plan. And I ended up tossing it in the fire and saying, I'm going to find another way to fund this. I don't have a 10-year plan. I don't operate that way. And there's nothing wrong with operating that way, but it's not how I roll. Yeah. And it's more like, just kind of day by day. And I read a book called Goal Free Living once. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't, but it resonates.
It's not actually about having no goals. Yeah. But it was really affirming for me, because he talks about like the type A people who go after a goal in a certain way, and contrasts it with like what he calls the river people who go after their goals in a different way. Mm-hmm. And it might look a lot more circuitous. It might even look irresponsible to some other people, because it's a more meandering path, because it tries on a lot of different things, and it goes from like inspiration rather than necessarily always a clear knowing of what I'm going for. I'm just being curious, and I'm seeing what happens along the way. And that's kind of how I've been rolling. And I used to feel kind of guilty for that, because I was told it was irresponsible. Yeah. And I realized I have my clients sometimes redefine responsibility. Like, what do you mean? Like, I was being responsible to my heart. That's responsible too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Highest responsibility. You're the only one that lives with it.
Redefine discipline too. Is discipline this punitive thing, or is it what brings you the freedom that you wanted? By having a little discipline to stay on the healthy path and do what it takes to regain your health and feel great. And that's not punitive. That's liberating. Yeah. That kind of discipline. So
absolutely. It takes some time to get there though, right? And I would love to ask you, you mentioned earlier about how old programming doesn't really have the same footing it used to. It starts to run its course and you catch it. Yeah. But for a lot of people, old programming runs their show. How did you get to a place where you had old programming, old thoughts, old hoopties that you get stuck in, to being in a point where that hoopty gets cut short? Because that's my experience. I have the exact same experience. I used to have, just even for a crude example, like, oh, I can never do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, I can, and then I'd catch it and it's like, and then it's like, I just feel it and it's like, no. But how do you find yourself in that place, or how would you help somebody who is stuck in their mind loops?
A couple things that happened for me. One was I would write in my journal a lot, just naturally, even as a teenager. I loved journaling, and in my 20s and 30s, I was just always writing stuff. And I would get to the point where I got so sick of seeing the same story on the page. Yeah. I would get disgusted with it, or I would start to laugh. Like, this is ridiculous. It would start to look silly and ridiculous. Like, I can't believe I'm dribbling
Groundhog's Day.
Same thing I've been writing. Yeah. this is the same stupid problem. I'm sick of talking about this problem. I'm sick of writing about this problem. It just didn't have any power anymore because it looked silly. So, so that would be one way that I got out of that. The other thing was I would have these aha moments where I realized something was happening. And if I just changed the way I looked at it, all of a sudden it all looked different. And I don't know when that started happening early, like in my 20s or something, where I had these moments where I just literally had like a light bulb go off, where I just shifted. I just noticed the power of, that's what got me really interested in studying the mind and the mental games we play, is because I started on my own noticing that if I just looked at it differently and turned it around, everything looked really different. And I would feel really different about the whole thing, because now I was seeing it through a different perspective and a different lens. And all I did was a little trick of the mind. And so I was like, wow, that is like super powerful. Cool stuff. You can play these little tricks. And I used to call it flicking a switch. I would just flick the switch, turn it around, and all of a sudden it looks different. That's why I think I was later attracted to Byron Katie's work, because she does that. It's like this 4-step process. Can you turn it around? Like, who are you when you carry this one thought? And who would you be if you just dropped it? If you just went neutral even, and you just didn't have that other thought, you might, you know, if you have this thought that I cannot hang out with this annoying person, and then you just drop that thought, all of a sudden, maybe you can hang out with them. Maybe they're not even annoying anymore because you're not coming in with that thought that that's going to be what happens. And so those were the two things, noticing I could flick the switch, and also just getting exhausted by the ongoingness of my old story, that it got boring, you know, and silly looking. And, you know, you just need to like get tired of it. Get tired enough, just like you do with clothes. You know, you get sick of wearing the same clothes. You finally just want something different. I just wanted a different story. And
being brave enough to choose it, right? To actually be like, all right, like this is enough. I'm ready for something different.
There was a profound incident again in Costa Rica, at the top of that waterfall, at the top of Diamantes Falls, where we used to jump off of it with the retreaters. And we had a jiu-jitsu master, this woman. She was like Amazonian. She had these big shoulders, and she was really athletic, and she had been trained. She could kill somebody really fast with her jiu-jitsu knowledge. She was like world class, had won these world things. So she was amazing. And then there was another guy up there who was a world-class mountain bike rider in the mountains. Neither of them could jump off the waterfall, but everybody else could. And this woman, she was in tears because she watched somebody who didn't even know how to swim jump off of the cliff. And the guide had an inner tube ready for her and kind of caught her at the bottom. And she was like, she was really being tested because she was such a strong, courageous athlete, but she couldn't do this one thing. And we had a coaching session the day before, and she told the other person up there, the mountain bike rider who also couldn't jump off, she said, Ellen told us in our coaching group the other day that we could change our story. And she goes, I have just decided, like in this moment, I'm changing my story. And she jumped off the cliff, and she could not stop talking about it. That's all she did, was flick the switch and decided that it was only scary because she had told her that all her life. Everyone else had clearly, the evidence was they'd all jumped off safely. So it was all in her head, and that was a profound example for her of what else she might be able to flick a switch about. So, you know, we just get in programs and ruts, and I now find it really exciting to test myself and find out where the ruts are and see if I can unrut myself everywhere. I have this dream that, like, so I told my sister that someday I will, my goal is to like shoot for like being untriggerable. And she's like, that's impossible. And she goes, I have to get triggered when somebody talks about this or that. And I said, no, you don't. You're choosing to. And I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'm going to enjoy the journey of playing with the idea that I don't have to get triggered.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. I think what you just said there, playing with the idea, you know, it's like
Yeah.
creating some excitement around it, creating an opportunity for exploration, for unknown, not deciding you already know, and there's just something magic there, right?
I
Like
know I'm
in not knowing and
here and
being willing.
I have fun with these
Yeah,
things, and maybe
me
that's
too.
so
Me
we're
too.
both
Same
weird.
stuff. I made a decision a long time ago that I would play with discomfort, and
Mhm.
I would try and get myself in those places and or just be okay with being in those places, and a lot of my raw journey has been with that too, because
Mhm.
I had zero interest of being on stage, and I find it
Yeah.
very uncomfortable, to be honest. Like a lot of people do,
Yeah.
but I found myself there, and you rise to the challenge and you grow through it, right? And
Yeah.
it's
You
that.
might even end up having some fun with it
Yeah,
or you just have fun with the self mastery aspect of it.
yeah,
That pushing yourself, leaning. I don't like to be aggressive about it, but like I use this example in yoga where we can like lean into our edge, not push aggressively
no,
through it and rip a muscle or something, but lean into it and not just stay completely in our comfort zone, but gently,
really
gradually,
stretch
consistently
it.
over time, keep leaning into those edges so that life stays interesting and it stays exciting, and you don't get stuck in these ruts of relative what you think is comfort, because it's actually not comfortable to be in a rut.
No,
We
no,
think it is, but it's actually uncomfortable because we know deep down that we're not really living and we're not really challenging ourselves appropriately, and therefore we're not really growing and we're not getting out of life what we could, and
yeah,
it's not that comfortable deep down to stay in the
no,
comfort zone.
no.
So I think it's fun to push the edges or to lean into the edges and see what else might be possible. And while finding, I learned this as a parent. Like a parent has a good idea with their own child what level of challenge that is productive for that child. That's one of the problems I have with like the public schools is when a teacher has a group of 30 kids, they can't possibly be working that intimately with what's the appropriate challenge for each kid. And so some kids get bored and act out, and some kids get frustrated and depressed because it's too challenging. And so finding for each of us, it's different for everybody. That's why, even if I believe there's like a human optimal diet, it's a very different journey for everybody moving in that direction. And so understanding yourself well enough, getting to know yourself well enough that you understand what's an appropriate challenge level for you.
Yeah.
I used to run a 30-day raw challenge, I called it, class, where people came to my house every week for an 80-10-10 style dinner, and then we had a coaching group. And I later stopped calling it that and just call it a 30-day challenge. And so everybody in the first group would decide what level of challenge they wanted to take on.
Yeah.
Some people wanted to be all raw for that month. Some people wanted to do one raw day a week. Some people wanted to be raw till 4 every day. It was all good. Everybody was just going to, I asked them to pick a challenge that was going to challenge them.
Yeah.
But that they believed they could do.
They could do. Yeah.
That they could have some success. It's not going to be easy, but you believe you could succeed.
Yeah.
And don't pick something that you already know you're going to fail.
No. Yeah, that usually just snowballs you back the other direction to Taco Bell.
Right. Or you can shoot for the moon. I have a quote somewhere, shoot for the moon and you'll land somewhere in the stars. But be good with that.
Yes.
That you didn't land on the moon, but you landed somewhere in the stars. And so, even though maybe you didn't reach that very lofty goal, you reached something great that was better than where you were. So either way, it's like acceptance of, our own our own pace and our own level of how fast we want to challenge ourselves, how hard some people just have a super big appetite for super big challenges. I thought that was a snake at first because all I saw was her tail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's totally true. I mean, Katie, no, the old saying, know thyself and to thine own self be true, right? I mean,
hey, that is one of my chapter titles. Did you read that out of my? It's literally the title of the chapter, one of the chapters in my book.
It didn't come from there, but I do know that. But yes,
a little hokey, but I went deep with it.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people just want baby steps, and that is perfect because you're going to get somewhere amazing if you just consistently keep taking baby steps forward.
Yeah.
So
Bite-sized pieces, right?
right.
Just, and whether we're talking about habits or diet, sometimes it's just, there's a couple bites here and there.
Exactly. A little bit more than the day before or the week before, or, I do see people, clients and people I see out there who get into unproductive trouble spots by, being what I would call kind of extreme about it, where it's all or nothing. I had one client who insisted on being all raw all of a sudden overnight, and I recommended against it because I knew her personality after working with her for a bit, and she did it anyway. We're like geographically far apart. There's nothing I can do about it. It's her journey. She's decided to go against my advice, and she did great for 30 days, for about a month. Right? She did great. And I thought, oh, maybe I was wrong about this one. Maybe she really can do this challenge. And then she went to a bar with her husband and had a hamburger and a beer.
Oh, wow.
She ended up
a little bit of a shift.
She ended up in the ER with gallbladder problems.
No way. There's a saturated fat, and
it was really hard on her. She must have eaten a lot of burger and fries and beer after a completely clean raw diet for a month. And that was unfortunate. And it was like the big yo-yo effect happened, because I guess I was, a little bit right about that one, that I would have much rather seen her be on a cooked food, whole plant-based vegan diet for a little while, and then add in more raw and go more gradually if she could.
Yeah.
Other people can go overnight, but it depends on your personality and your position in your understanding of it, and your health level and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Whether you can do that or not. So transition is really an important thing to think about what's going to be
absolutely
the best, and be intelligent about how you move toward a raw diet.
Yeah, it really seems like some people just need to be shooken, and whether someone else shakes them or they shake themselves, right? Those extremes in contrast in order to really get it, and other people take a little more mindful approach, and slow and steady wins the race, right?
And that's kind of nice. I'm sometimes envious of those people, because it's nice not to have such big shakeups, because those can be a little disorienting and difficult.
Yeah.
Some of us have to.
Someone here is asking, why raw vegans avoid cooked food, and is wild rice raw?
Oh. Why raw vegans avoid cooked food? Well, I mean, it depends on the person, but I would say for myself, it's just because I feel better on the raw food. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
It's not like I don't ever have a bite of cooked food. I'm not afraid of it.
No. Yeah. That took a long time for me to get to. Did that take a long time for you to get to that place?
First 12 years I was on raw under Doug Graham's tutelage, I was perfect. I never strayed on anything. I didn't take any supplementation, everything. Not that that's perfect, but I just was on this path that I was doing in this certain way, no matter what. And, and then over time, after I had mastered that and had the muscle to do it, it's easier for me to be able to, be a little less perfect with something and not have it pull me off my path. It just doesn't pull me off. It's just for a moment or whatever. I don't eat a big plate of cooked food or suddenly start eating cooked food all day long or anything. It's just not a big deal. People ask me, are you 100% raw? And I don't even like that conversation really, because I'm a raw fooder. I eat a raw food diet. Have I ever had a piece of cooked potato or broccoli? Yeah, I have along the way. Is it a big deal? No, because it didn't pull me off my path. I know the path I'm on. I know why I'm on it. And I choose to stay on it because it serves me so well in so many ways.
I can absolutely resonate with that for sure.
I forgot what the person's other question was.
Can you eat wild rice raw?
That I don't know. I would imagine you could sprout it. And, I don't eat grains in general, so I know you can sprout them and soak them and do stuff, but I still find them to be not my optimal food. They're
heavier.
I don't feel as good. I don't digest them very well. That or sprouted lentils or any kind of legumes. I do best with mostly juicy fruit and,
Yes.
you know, bananas and dates. And I have some dried fruit, but that's mostly for fun. And I have some nuts and seeds, but not a lot because I don't like, my body does not like to process a lot of fat. So I keep it real lower on the fat and high on the juicy stuff. And
Sweet and juicy. It's
I
a
feel
it's a
better that way.
sweet and juicy way to live, I
I
tell you.
also don't feel good when I overeat or when I just
Yes.
have too much food in my system. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Simple truths, right?
that is so true. I mean, that's a real like core of my life experience is simplicity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple living, simple eating, simple thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes the simpler thinking is actually wiser.
Yeah.
Um, letting the emotions be a little more simple. Don't make them so complex. They're just feelings.
Mhm.
Um, simple days. I try to keep it not too complicated, not too busy, not trying to do too many things in too short of a time period.
Sounds nice. Ellen, I like what you got going on here. It fits you super well, and I'm also honestly just really, really happy for you. You know, I think
Thank you.
it's beautiful to see what you've created and so many people you've helped through your message and all your exploration in this amazing raw food lifestyle. And you know, it's just it's really awesome, and it makes me excited to explore more of that as well, truthfully, and to the tropics are just they're so dang nice. And you know, Florida, I guess, is subtropical or is it tropical?
Yeah, I'm in southern Florida, so it's, you know, there you can't get much farther south without going into leaving the United States and going into the tropics. And I thought about, you know, people kept asking me, when are you going to move to Costa Rica? And as much as that might be really, really nice and beautiful, I didn't want to be that far from my family, from my
Yeah.
kids. And so I don't choose to do that right now, but I'm, you know, I like what I'm doing right now, and I'm still learning how to do it here. And I'm always a work in progress. I'm still learning how to do me, and I always will be. And, you know, I love what you're doing and how many people you're reaching, and how these bundles, you know, when you get all these creators together. And I'm, you know, I've thanked you before, and I'll thank you again here for lighting a fire under me to get something done in time, to have a little bit of a deadline. You came to me and you said, I'm giving you 6 months warning this time. Maybe you can get some new material out. And I did, and it became inconvenient at one point because I had all these visitors, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to let this, I'm going to get this done. I'm just going to stay with it. I'm going to get it done. And I made myself write, you know, like a chapter a week, and I got it done. And now I look at like what you've put together here, and how many recipe books there are, and how many other kinds of messages that are there. You know, I don't know when I'll get a chance to look at all of it, but I hope that, you know, I hope that people who buy it can think of it as, because at first I was like, who in their right mind wants 40 ebooks all at once? You know, like that's a little overwhelming, but don't think about it that way. Just put it in a big folder on your computer and open one a week or something like
Yeah.
that, and check it out, and know that you know, you could just go through it as slowly as you want, or as quickly as you want. There's no, but you've got this library like totally affordably and instantaneously. You've just way upgraded your health library to have not just recipes, but a lot of other wisdom there as well. I mean, my book is not about recipes at all. It's
Nice.
about the kind of thing we've been talking about. And then some people are writing about like exercise and fitness. And I don't know, there's
Yes.
mini courses about how to get to your next level in whatever you're trying to achieve. And I just think that I know a lot of the people in the bundle that are the creators, and these are people who are really like sincere and serious on this path, and are really putting their heart and soul into it, you know. And we're not trying to like convince anybody. We just want to share
Yeah.
this amazing path, and if it's for whoever it's right for, they'll find their way to it. And so I really appreciate how you're making that more available and easier. And that's one of the blessings of the
Thank you.
internet and people who know how to
Yeah.
use it
Yeah.
is you can get it out there in a big way.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful to have my work get out there through this as well.
Well,
So
super, super honored that you took the time and put the energy into it. And I'll tell you a little secret. It puts a fire under my ass as well. So
yeah, to get this together. Yeah, because you had to
and
write
just to do
something
my
too.
own book, you know, like You know, and that's why we do it once a year, though. We, you know,
Yeah.
in the beginning, we were doing it once every 6 months, and it was just too much. And now once a year fits really well because, you know, like you said, 40 ebooks. I mean, once a year, you can go through all those and gain a lot of knowledge and get a good base of new recipes you love and new inspiration. And then, you know, next year there'll be new inspiration coming forth because everyone who's a part of the bundle is just bubbling forth of the things that are current to them and that they're really enlivened by.
Yeah, and yours is a book of stews this time, right?
Yes, yeah. My book is Cravings Buster, Sweet and Savory Stews. So my desire in creating that book was to try and take the most classic and famous stews from around the world and make raw versions of them that a lot of people wouldn't even know are raw, you know, and it is again cravings busters so that they're those foods that if you are going to choose to eat something a little bit heavier or you just like foods that feel a little bit more kind of hearty, that these are really well combined, easy to digest, authentic tasting stews. And I'm very, very happy with it. It's one of those things, right, where like at the beginning, you're like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And then you start doing it. And then when you're done, you're like, wow, look at what just happened. Look what I just created.
Chris, you're a master at that. You've been making these kind of stews forever. You know how to do this. You just had to put it into the book form.
A little bit, but these, I'll admit, and I don't want to try and seem like I'm trying to do this much. But some of these are pretty,
new ones.
They're new, and there's some pretty next level ones. There's ones that really even surprised me, and you know, and like for example, I'm going to be making some of them live as well. Like right before I got into raw food, the last cuisine that I really, really got into was Ethiopian, and I haven't made too much Ethiopian. I've played with it around like some time, but in there I have an Ethiopian wat curry, and it's like,
wow.
I love it. I mean, it brings me right back. I mean, these are kind of recipes that, to me, if part of you still does miss some cooked foods, once you have them, it's like, well, I get the exact same enjoyment, but I feel way better. Yeah, so they're all 100% raw, uncooked stews. And
I've had fun. I have had some fun with your pizzas and pancakes.
Yeah.
Those plants.
Oh, I know you love the pancakes and the cinnamon buns, and
I'm actually very sort of lazy in the kitchen. But when I pull out a recipe, it's usually one of yours. Yours are, I have your books and I know you and I know the love that you put into them and they're just fun. And especially for people living in the North, I think some of the recipes, the pizzas and stews and things like that can be a way to get through the cold times. Right?
And a fun way too to share. That's one of the things I liked was like, you know me, I'm pretty darn simple most of the time. I love mono meals and, you know, fruit-based and light greens and stuff like that. But sometimes when I'm sharing food, if I'm having a potluck or, you know, it's like Sunday or it's like a Christmas or whatever, I like to make the pizza and then everyone around wants to share, you know, and have some. And it's a fun communal thing.
Yeah, and you don't have to be just the weird isolated raw fooder. You can bring something that's really attractive to everybody else, and then they're like, wow, this is kind of cool actually. Yeah. So no, definitely
it's lots
great.
Of fun.
And I see the pictures. I mean, there's some amazing recipe books in this new thing. All these wraps, I'm seeing these amazing wrap ideas. And
ridiculous.
I don't even know what else. I haven't opened all of them yet.
Do you want to see what I'm having for dinner? And I'll admit, I've looked a couple bits to the side because I made hungry. This. I am hungry. I made this. What time? I had my 7 o'clock. What time is it now? 10:30. So it's at
getting late for eating.
Yes, it is. But I'm gonna still have it. At 6:30, I made this, and I was gonna eat it, but then the other talk went long.
Right. I'm sorry.
But no. No stories needed. Definitely.
Whoa. This is a whole plate of wraps?
This is a whole plate of raw vegan manicotti. I wanted to say manicotti.
What's inside? What's the creamy stuff inside?
The inside is kind of a cauliflower and lemon juice and herbs and really flavorful filling. It's really, really tasty and nice tomato sauce.
Kind of cheesy like inside.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of a cheesy like inside, and then like a really nice doughy wrapper with really unique ingredients. Like this is from Daniel McKinnon. He's been doing raw food for about the same amount of time as I, from from near the same place. He actually grew up part of his life in the same city that I was in, but we didn't really hang out until years later. But he's a really, really creative chef and makes really cool stuff. So his book's in the bundle as well.
I wish I could click my heels and come over, and I don't know if you'd share that because you probably want the whole plate, but
if I had a salad, then I'd probably share it, you know. But I'm gonna probably eat the whole thing here tonight.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Well,
Enjoy. I think you've been working hard.
Yeah, and I'll burn it off. It'll be all good. Someone here is asking, do you have a sample stew on your page? I do not right now. I mean, there's pictures of it, but I'll quickly let you guys know that on Saturday the 6th at 9 a.m., I'm going to be doing a live food demo of one of my favorites, a savory Irish stew, which is kind of like my goal with that one was to make like a gravy, you know, kind of base stew, the classic kind of gravy based stew, and I got to say it's one of my favorites. And then let's see, oh, there we go. On Thursday the 9th at 9 a.m., I'm doing a live recipe demo of my raw Thai stew. And then the last one on Thursday, May 11th. So the other one was Tuesday, actually. Thursday, May 11th on the Chef AJ show at 2 p.m. PST. I'm doing that Ethiopian lentil wat, the Ethiopian one that I mentioned. So
cool. And that's the last day. That's the last day of the bundle.
Yeah, exactly. That's the last day of the bundle, and these will live on my page and on my YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be, you know, sharing abundantly some of my favorites from the book in the hopes that it'll entice you to check the rest out and the whole bundle.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You guys amaze me at how much you do every day to get these bundles off the ground here. So.
Well, you know, Lissa amazes me. So each level, right?
Well, yeah, it's a team. You've developed this over time. You started with a vision and a dream. You got a team. You got a dream team, and then you can. That's how you can do this in such an expanded way. So and keep succeeding with it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we got the dream team with you and everyone in the community who's embracing the bundle and, you know, sharing and, you know, taking part. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, it's been such a pleasure, Ellen. It's been a great catch up too. It's been a little while.
I know. It's been a little while. I've really, you know, ever since like I guess COVID and travel changed and the Woodstock Fruit Festival, we haven't seen each other there, and we haven't seen each other in Costa Rica, and now you moved overseas and I moved to Florida, and I don't know. We'll get together again.
We will. Absolutely. I know our paths will cross. Are you planning on doing retreats again out in Costa Rica, or are you sticking it all in Florida, I guess?
I don't know. I haven't decided. For now, I'm just doing what I'm doing in Florida and trying to like just sort of get all that figured out and lined up, and I'm just letting it go slow for right now.
I love it.
And maybe the Woodstock Fruit Festival, maybe it's going to happen sometime soon. I don't know where or when, but I will try to be at that. So, because I missed that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for news of the next location. So.
Yeah. So she's asking, what is her contribution? So you want to share just a little bit briefly again about your contribution?
Yeah, it's in an ebook version, so I can't hold it up here for you, but it's called Following Nature Home. The subtitle is Raw Truths Uncovered on My 20-Year Fruitarian Odyssey. And it's got chapters about like the sweet truth about sweet fruit and our symbiotic relationship with fruit and transition and resiliency and decoding true hunger, raw spirituality, dream building, knowing yourself, community, speaking your truth, really living in your truth and really standing up and speaking out, and ultimately like living in love. So I kind of go deep and personal. I share a lot of personal stories in there, and just a lot of my thoughts that have evolved over this 21 plus year path now, as I dived in with raw. So I
gotta say, bless you and thank you for all the wisdom shared. I mean, this talk itself has been a gem of a talk, and just, it's been really fun, and it's gonna live here on my Instagram, and I'm gonna move it over to my YouTube page as long as that's okay with you, and on my website as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Healthy by Wendy, who's also part of the bundle with her course. She's wondering how she can find you.
Okay. Well, I do have a website, ellenlivingston.com.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably the best way. I'm on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Awesome.
And Instagram,
Well, thank you
although
again.
I am only just learning how to use Instagram, so I'm not a big presence there, but you can find me there. I might do better soon. This just little things like this with you, Chris, helps me because I'm like, oh, okay, this wasn't so like, it's not so complicated.
And just like you said, just play with it, you know, no expectations and have fun, right?
Right.
It's that's all I try and do too. I'm mostly, I'll be honest, and I mostly do stories, and I have a harder time doing regular posts, you know, like for me doing, you know, outside of bundle time, doing more than doing a post a day actually for me is actually feels like a lot, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Often I don't do that much, but for the stories, I just share what I'm doing.
Right.
It's just like kind of like you said, I'm making my my conscious creation life through sharing and just, you know, being excited and
Yep.
you know, trying to help where I
And
can.
just figuring out your best mode for how to share that. Yeah. So
Exactly, and finding my balance and all that stuff too. You know, it's a forever journey, but
you
and it's
know,
always going to change, but it's fun.
I don't know if everybody's like this, but I have found that when we start doing stuff that we really care about, it just makes it's just spontaneously you want to share.
Yeah.
You want to help, you want to show people, you want to share, you want friends on the path, or you just want to be able to like say, hey, I did this thing and it was fun.
Yeah.
Or I learned something really cool, or I cannot help sharing. It's just something I do naturally.
Yeah.
I think it's
Nope.
I think it's human nature actually if we're you know if we're open in our life and we're not all closed into some kind of depressed shell, when we come out of that shell, we just want to share. That's what humans do.
Yeah.
And so we find a way, whatever that way is.
Yeah. And it just happens to be extra sweet and juicy when it's sweet and juicy and leaves you feeling loosey goosey and better than you've ever felt.
Awesome. There's another bumper sticker. By the way, I need more bumper stickers. We got to figure out how you made those peace, love, and seasonal fruit. We did this project together. I told Chris I needed a real big bumper sticker version of it. And so we made some, but now neither of us can remember who printed those.
No, I don't remember, but I'm sure I can find another if we can't find that original one. And I do still have some, but I think I have some. Actually, I do have some here, and I got a couple back in Canada. They never made it to my website because I just had them in my hand. But
well, let me finish with a funny story about that because I need some more to hand out. So my partner Todd and I have some of them, and I have one on my car, and we both have them on our electric bikes.
yeah.
And I have them on half my clothing, right? I mean, not the bumper sticker, but the same, yes, like Chris is wearing. And so I go for this walk often with my dog in this park, and I just have this tank top that says peace, love, and seasonal fruit. That's the perfect sweaty running shirt that I wear it a lot. And this
Blue
lady,
one?
she kept noticing it, that I would always have, it's like a blue tank top that just says peace, love, and seasonal fruit. And so I would always wear it, and she commented on it. And then she saw it on my car, but she didn't know it was my car. She saw a car in a parking lot that had the sticker on it. Then she saw a bike lock up to a bike rack that had the sticker on it. Then she saw my partner with his bike with the sticker on it. And she finally goes up to him. She goes, I am seeing this all over town. Is it a club? And he was just joking with her. He said, yeah, you want to join? So I have this like vision that we have it on our camper too, that we'll get these plastered all over the place and people will keep seeing it. And they'll be like, what is that? And you know, they'll find out.
That's beautiful.
I have people, sometimes I have people like lean out of a car and honk and give me a thumbs up. Love your shirt, you know, love your bumper sticker. Yeah, it's out there.
It's blessed by that. I absolutely love it. I mean, I do the same, of course, right?
Yeah.
You know, like,
well,
but it is one of those things, right? Where, yeah, you're just walking down the street, you can see people smiling and you can see people reacting to it. And it's like one of my favorite ways.
Nailed it with that phrase.
Yeah.
And so it's just $1 million phrase. And so I just want to, I just like, that's one of the ways I share. I just plaster it around town. So.
Oh, well, I'll find a way to get you some new ones. Okay. Even if I just find a new place, and I'll send a bunch to you.
Yeah, I give them to any clients who come and stay here in Florida, and they go home with a peace, love, and seasonal fruit bumper sticker. And then we've got another car in another state that has one. So
I wonder Is the ones that are on your cars, is that, because it was pretty thick. Is it discoloring or is it really good
No,
quality?
it's holding up really well. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's been there for like 8 years now or something, and it's just beginning to have one corner peel off a little.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll try a little bit harder to find that place
It
that
was
did it
pretty good quality.
before.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. All
Okay.
right.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you
Oh,
so much
thank you
for
so
this,
much.
and
All of a sudden,
enjoy
I
your
forgot that we
dinner.
were live. I thought we were just, just FaceTiming.
All right. Enjoy your dinner and enjoy the rest of the bundle. And I will hope to see you one of these days.
Sounds great.
All
Say
right.
hey to Todd and much love. Thank you again so
Yeah.
much for your contribution as well as for poking me and for coming on live with me today.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thank you. All right.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
See you, everyone. Thank you so much.